Testing, testing. One, two, three. Blake, McBobo, you guys in here? Can you hear me all right?
Check, check. 1, 2, 7. Yes.
Awesome. All right, perfect. Thank you guys for jumping on with me. See East of Ethan jumping in too. Son of Legend, thank you guys. Well, I'm sure we'll have some more people filter in here very shortly. Sorry for the difference in schedule today. I'm actually going to watch the game with my dad. I'm going to go over to his place, so I got to leave here
Ooh.
a little bit earlier than normal today, so a little bit of a schedule change. But we'll jump right into it. Let me share my screen here, and then we'll get started. There we go. All right, got the Fantasy Labs optimizer up. I have a few thoughts that I'd like to start with on the slate. Obviously, I think the biggest news is Aaron Jones being out. Now, you would think that would make, obviously on paper, A.J. Dillon is a good play. He's going to come with a good projection. But even in the games that Aaron Jones has missed, not only has he performed bad, but he's also looked really bad. You can see the efficiency is just not there. Here's his yards per attempt through the first 4 games. You can see his best game was 3.7 yards per attempt, and his worst game, 1.5 yards per attempt. Hasn't been really involved in the passing game at all. He's got 5 total targets on the season, and he has 2 targets since week 1. And Aaron Jones has missed all of those games outside of the Detroit game, where he didn't play a ton anyways. So not super excited to play Dillon. I do think that he's probably going to be a little bit popular just because of his projection and his price tag. I think people that are building with optimizers are going to have a tough time getting off of him because he, like I said, he's probably the best value in this game on paper. However, I do think there's a pretty easy way to get off of him. And I think people are going to be really excited to play Patrick Taylor, specifically because he's very cheap. He's $200. He's literally the minimum price on DraftKings for Showdown. Taylor does have a solid game under his belt, specifically against the Saints when Aaron Jones did not play. He played on 31 of 79 snaps, 3 rushing attempts, and had 4 targets. And I know that doesn't sound great in the grand scheme of things, but when you're paying $200 for someone, you would take 3 rushes and 3 rushes, 4 targets for a total of 7 opportunities. You take that any day of the week. So I think Taylor is going to be really popular. At least as far as $200 players go. So, and for good reason too. It's hard not to like him. It's really tough to see him getting less than 5, 6, maybe even 7 touches is sort of like the minimum for him. I can't imagine that Dillon gets the normal workload that you would expect, or at least like what people are going to project him for. Unless I guess there is a world where he goes out there the first few carries, he looks good maybe, and then maybe they ride him a little bit. But just basing it off the last several games, and even going back to last year, Dillon has just not looked very good. He looks very slow. So yeah, kind of a disappointing start to the season for Dillon, and I'm not sure that Aaron Jones being out is going to help him all that much. I do want to mention Emmanuel Wilson too, who's kind of like a nice pivot off of both of those guys. Wilson in that Saints game, only 8 of 79 snaps, but did get 2 receptions and a target. There is a world where these guys are all kind of getting work, and if you believe that Dillon is going to be sort of on the back burner, then I think Taylor and Wilson should be in your player pool. Now, I think Wilson is much more of a large field. If you're making 20 lineups or 150 lineups, I think that he's in consideration for that. You can see people are going to play Austin Hooper. People are going to play Patrick Taylor, even Amir Abdullah, and Dontavian Wicks. All of those guys are going to get played. I don't think Wilson's going to get played, and he is, a point and a half behind those guys that I just listed, 2 points behind Taylor. So if you're a large field MME player, I think Wilson should definitely be in your pool, and I would have some exposure to him. I know in my 20 lineups, I'm going to have a lineup or 2 with Wilson. But yeah, I think that's pretty much like how I just wanted to start. I also think Christian Watson coming back, it's I don't think he was on a snap count, which was kind of frustrating to figure out after the game. It was reported after the game that Christian Watson and Aaron Jones were on a snap count, which was frustrating. I wish we had learned that beforehand, but it is what it is. You would expect him. I don't think he's coming in with the injury designation. I know that this questionable tag is right here. I think Fantasy Labs is a little bit slow to update these sometimes. I don't think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost positive that he's not coming in with the injury designation. And if that's the case, then I would fully expect Watson to get his full allotment of snaps. So I guess we'll cover Adams too. Adams coming in with a questionable tag. I don't think that's going to affect him much. He's been practicing all week, so I'm not reading too much into either of these Q tags, to be totally honest. But let's get some opinions. I see. I know McBobo and Blake are with us tonight. Blake, do you have a favorite captain for tonight?
Davante Adams for me. Definitely my most owned.
Yeah, Davante Adams is a tough one to get away from. I mean, his lowest targets on the season, eight targets in his lowest game, and that was against the Bills, where the Raiders offense really couldn't get anything going. They only had 40 offensive snaps, and he still had 8 targets. And then in the other games, 9 targets, 20 targets, and 13 targets. I mean, even at his price tag, that's phenomenal. 11.2K is I think that's fairly priced. You could even make the case that he's slightly underpriced. So yeah, it's hard to argue with Blake there. I think Davante Adams is in a great spot. He'll probably be one of my highest owned players as well, especially at captain there. Blake, I'm sorry, not Blake, McBobo. Do you have, besides Adams, do you have a guy that you like at captain?
I actually favoring a little bit on Jacoby Myers, and I think just for obviously Devontae Adams, wide receiver one, he's going to get the targets, but I think with the coverage that's going to be on him, I think it opens up a lot of opportunity for Myers, and I like the just the number of targets that Myers is getting from Jimmy G is pretty promising. That get that much targets usually get some results there. So between Myers and Watson on the other side is another captain I'm kind of looking at. It's a little different there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that call too. I like the Raiders pass game like as a whole tonight. And if you look at Jacoby Myers, his 3 games, he did miss week 2 against the Bills, but his 3 games, he did have a 4 target game last week against the Chargers. But besides that, 12 targets and 10 targets. And at his price tag, he is 7,000 flat. It's really hard not to like Myers as well. So I like both of those calls by McBobo and Blake. Myers and Davante, both in great spots. And yeah, I like McBobo bringing up that Myers will very likely have the easier route to the easier matchup. Obviously, I think Davante is sort of matchup proof, but that doesn't take away that Myers will definitely be seeing less coverage, less like bracket coverage, probably not as much Jair Alexander, that sort of deal. So I like Myers as well. And then he also mentioned Christian Watson, who we just briefly discussed for his injury stuff. But yeah, you can see here, Watson only played on 26 of 57 snaps last week. Now, it is worth noting, too, that the Packers had like a mini bye week. They played the previous Thursday night, so now there's been like about 10 off days. So you'd expect Watson to play a lot more than he did on that previous Thursday night game. And even in that game, 4 targets, 25 yards, and a touchdown. So on 26 snaps, you know what I mean? So I know that's not not the greatest stat line, but when you consider it was only on less than half of the team's offensive snaps, I don't think that's anything to scoff at there. Christian Watson also kind of a great showdown player because he's a deep ball threat that can really, pay off his price tag with one long touchdown. That's definitely like in his repertoire. So I like all 3 of those calls by those guys. Thanks for your opinions, boys. And I'll throw in Josh Jacobs, who I know is not shocking anyone. That's a pretty obvious play there, but he is worth mentioning for sure. His role has been insane, especially over these last 2 weeks when they've been in these more competitive games. Even week one, I guess this week 2 against Buffalo, no one on the Raiders did very well. So you kind of throw that one out. But if you look at the other 3 games for Josh Jacobs, 17 rushes, 19 rushes, and then also 11 targets, which is just insane for a running back. 5 targets, even 6 targets in that Buffalo game. So, even in the game where they were trailing, Jacobs still heavily involved in the offense, and then 3 targets in that week 1 game. So he's got in every game he's got at least 15 targets, and in 3 of the 4 games, what is that? That is at least 22 targets, 22 opportunities.
26. 25 targets. Yeah, he's third on the team. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. 25 targets total for sure. McBobo's right there, and then 20 at least 22 opportunities in 3 of those 4 games. Raiders, I should mention too, have been trending up. I think it has a little bit to do with the Aaron Jones news, but they're now 2.5-point favorites. So you'd expect this game to play pretty competitively, and maybe Raiders playing with the lead here. So those 4 guys that we just talked about are personally my 4 favorite captain plays in the game: Davante Adams, Josh Jacobs, Jakobi Meyers, and Christian Watson. I think Watson and Dobbs, Romeo Dobbs, I think are, very similar. I do think Watson probably profiles better for showdown just because of what I mentioned earlier with him being more of like a deep ball threat. But Dobbs is probably likely, if someone's going to get a lot of catches, I would say that's more Dobbs, and obviously that plays better on a PPR format like DraftKings. Also, Dobbs is $400 more expensive, and that could explain the ownership discrepancy here. Not much of a discrepancy, but there is a little bit of one. So if Dobbs coming in a little bit less owned, but those 4 guys that we listed first, and then Dobbs kind of a close second there, I would say, are my top 5 captain plays on the night. You can go with A.J. Dillon. Probably not something I'm going to do. I think he's going to come with a little bit more ownership than what I'm comfortable with, especially with how terrible he's looked to start the season. Yeah, I like that. I'm assuming, was that McBobo? I like that. We need some more sound effects like that. That was really interesting.
I found a soundboard. I'm as new to Discord as any millennial. So
yeah, I saw that on there, and I just disregarded it, to be honest. But yeah, that's it. I like that one.
A.J. Dillon deserved the sad horn.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was perfectly used, if I may say so myself. Yeah, I think, that's as far as captains goes, I think we're pretty set on there. You could go down to Taylor, but the only thing is like, does Taylor have the upside to compete with the Davante Adams, with the Josh Jacobs, even with the Watson or a Myers? I'm not sure he does. And then if he does well, it also probably takes away from the other Packers players. So it's almost like, going down that cheap for captain doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then it kind of pigeonholes you into like a certain build. So even if you think that's somewhat unique for like large field tournaments, going Taylor at captain, it's probably going to pigeonhole you to building very similar lineups to all the other people that are using Taylor at captain. I don't think he's going to be like crazy owned at captain, but I do think the captain lineups that are going to be out there will be very similar to one another. So I hope that makes sense. We did have a question in chat, Jaden Reed versus Luke Musgrave. I thought that was a pretty interesting one. They're both kind of in this middling price range that I don't think is going to get played a whole lot, because I think a lot of people are going to go stars and scrubs. It's hard not to like Adams, hard not to like Jacobs. And then obviously we have a couple nice cheap pieces in Taylor and Hooper that I think will be generally popular. And then Dillon right below those guys with a better projection. I think, Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave are kind of going to get lost in the shuffle here. So I'm making it a point to kind of be over the field on those guys. Jaden Reed actually didn't seem to be affected by Christian Watson returning last week. You can see very consistent in his snap share and target share through the first 4 weeks. At least 5 targets in every game. That includes when Watson was back last week. It's very likely that Reed, Dobbs, and Watson are going to be in on the 3 wide receiver sets. And you could make the case that Reed and Dobbs are going to be in on the 2 wide receiver sets if they don't want Watson to be out there for, unnecessary snaps where they're maybe not in an obvious passing down situation. So I think Jaden Reed's in a really good spot, has a blow-up game already on his schedule. 8 targets, 4 receptions, 37 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that Falcons game week 2. So the upside's there, and he doesn't even need to do that much at 6,200. 4 or 5 catches and a touchdown would probably put him into the optimal there. Luke Musgrave, too, left the game early last week with a concussion, so kind of throw this one out there. That game against the Lions only played 14 snaps, 1 target, but obviously left the game early. Besides that, 4 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets. If you get an 8-target, 6-reception game and 49 yards, if you get 11 points from Musgrave at 5,200, I think you're going to be sitting pretty. And if he can sneak into the end zone, I like that quite a bit too. So those guys are really interesting in my opinion, and 2 guys that are not going to come with a lot of ownership. You can see 23% on Reed and about 19% on Musgrave there. So, and I guess we should cover the quarterbacks, and let's get some of these other guys back in the discussion here. Blake, do you have a preference between Jordan Love or Jimmy Garoppolo, or are you trying to fit both of them in there?
I think I like Garoppolo better, honestly. I think he has like a clear path to like a higher ceiling game compared to Love. Yeah, I think him, but I also have some lineups with both. I mean, I've always liked running like 2 QBs in the same lineup because they both usually have like decent floors. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said there. I tend to agree with you too. I think Garoppolo is $400 cheaper, and you get a little bit of a ownership discount on him. And Blake already mentioned that he likes Davante Adams at captain. I think it, just kind of depends where you're going with your lineup. If you have Adams at captain, obviously it makes more sense if you're to go Jimmy Garoppolo if you're just choosing one. But like Blake said, I do think that they're both pretty safe. They both have pretty safe floors. So not a bad idea to get both of them in there. And I think the deciding factor is just kind of how you're building the rest of your lineup. As you can see, we have them pretty close in projection, about 1.5 points. And that's reflected in the ownership as well. So I don't really have a strong preference between these guys. I do think Love has a little bit more rushing upside, obviously, but not a ton. So it's kind of a wash with the increase in ownership and price there. As you can see, Love does have at least 2 rushes in every game. Did have 9 rushes in that Saints game when they were kind of trailing the entire game and needing a comeback. But yeah, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 rushes for Love, it probably is his most likely outcome there. So not a huge preference between the 2 quarterbacks for myself. I think it just kind of depends on the rest of your lineup. McBobo, I think that pretty much is going to do it. Do you have any other any other thoughts on the slate in general, or do you want to talk about the kickers or the defense? Feel free to just give us anything before we jump out of here, or do some trivia.
Definitely am not interested in talking about the defense, and I think we all know why, because they're all piss poor. So, but yeah, no, I have to agree with Ethan on Jimmy G is my lean as well, and for the similar reasons. I think just the receivers there between Myers and Adams, possibly both. So, but yeah, but then again, with Jordan Love, no Aaron Jones, he's going to get more out to the wide receivers, and I do like Luke Musgrave here. He's definitely a good little safety net. So I don't know. Yeah, definitely Jimmy G was the lean. So we'll see. It's never know on Showdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Showdown is a bit of a crapshoot at times. It really comes down to, can you get the highest scoring player in your captain spot, or the highest at least like points per salary player, the player that does the best considering their price tag. So yeah, it's definitely a tough game for sure. I just noticing Caleb too is saying, first time watching the stream, your voice is so soothing. I really appreciate that, Caleb. It's probably just the mic. I have a pretty nice mic, so I think that makes me sound a little bit better, but I do appreciate that. Stank said, looks like Hooper is projecting better than Taylor. Yeah, Stank, I would take this with just a grain of salt, because one of the sites that I use the aggregated projection, I have like 3 or 4 different projection sets all aggregated here. And when I came on, one of the sites still hadn't removed Aaron Jones yet. So I don't think Taylor was coming with the amount of ownership that he will. The site that I trust the most for projections, and I'm not going to say who it is just because I don't give out free publicity, but I will let you guys know what they have. They have Taylor 13%, and then Hooper at 12%, give or take like a percentage. So it's close. It's close for sure. Within 2 percentage points, but I do think that Taylor is likely going to come with more ownership than Hooper. And like what I was mentioning earlier, I think a lot of people are kind of off the Dillon train. And if people share that same sentiment, I think Taylor's probably going to come in with more ownership than that 12% or 13% that we're seeing on him, or 14%. I'm sorry, I can't remember what I said now. But Miguel also had a question: who gets the backup RB, Wilson or Taylor? I think we covered that a little bit. I think it's Taylor, but if you're playing large field stuff, if you're making 20 lineups, 150 lineups, don't be afraid to go Wilson over Taylor. It would not be shocking at all if these guys, each get some work. And at $200, it really just matters like who gets a couple catches or who gets in the end zone. That's pretty much it, to be honest. So it's not like, even though Taylor is projecting, about 2 points better, 2.5 points better, I would take that with a grain of salt, because these are projections at best, and they will be wrong. They will be wrong a lot of the time. So yeah, don't be afraid in large field stuff to get off who I think will be popular in Taylor and kind of pivot to Wilson. I will say too, I just want to reiterate that I think Taylor is the backup running back. I expect him to get more touches and stuff, but from a game theory perspective, when you can get Wilson, let me see what his projection's at. Wilson is, sorry. Oh my God, it says 0%. He's obviously not going to be 0%, but very, very low owned. So when you can get him at a fraction the ownership of Taylor, and it's entirely possible that Wilson gets in the end zone and Taylor doesn't, then that's big leverage right there. So yeah, I think that pretty much is going to cover it, guys. I don't really have any other thoughts on the slate. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any I don't think there's really any like sneaky plays tonight. I think everyone is pretty aware of what's going on. I will say Hunter Renfrow is interesting just because of his price tag. I don't think he has much upside, but he also hasn't had a game this season where, he has like a high targets or high receptions. That could come at any time. Renfrow has shown us in the past that he has 5, 6, 7 catch games in his in his bag. So I do think that it's possible. Now it's a tough click because we haven't seen it this year, and obviously he's been besides week 1 where he didn't have a single catch, but in the weeks 2 through 4 he's been in between 3 and 4 points in every single one of those games. But I do think a Renfrow game is going to come sooner or later. I'm going to have a Renfrow lineup or 2 across my 20 lineups. If I was playing single entry, I don't know that I would go there, but he is on my radar for sure. I will say that. And maybe I'll just cover the defenses really quickly here. Obviously, neither defense is that great. However, I will say that on Showdown, you don't really need a good defense to score points, because one random defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown will pretty much seal the deal on these guys. I think that the kickers are going to be a lot more popular than the defenses. and because of that, I'm making sure to get each of the defenses in at least one of my lineups across the 20. Again, if I was going single entry, I'm not sure I would have either, but if you're playing multiple entries, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice to not have those guys in. I'll say 20 entries. If you're making 20 entries or more, I would be sure to have at least one Packers defense lineup and at least one Vegas defense lineup. I don't think it would be shocking if this game ended up being like a 20-14 game, and if one of those defenses holds the other team to 14 points and can get a couple sacks and stuff, it's, ends up with 6-7 points. It wouldn't be shocking to see them in the optimal lineup. So, like McBobo said, it's showdown. Crazy things have happened, a lot crazier things than Green Bay defense or Vegas defense getting in the optimal lineup have happened. I mean, Turpin for the Cowboys had a touchdown last night on one catch, left the game early, and I still think he was probably, or I'm not sure if he was in the optimal lineup, but he definitely was a piece on a lot of winning lineups. So yeah, don't be afraid to get different on Showdown. Don't be afraid to get different. Let's go. I think that pretty much covers it. I'm going to move the screen back over to the Discord here so we can do some trivia. And I also see our guy Minnie Fletch has a lineup here he wants us to review. Devontae Adams and captain, Jimmy G, Jordan Love, Jacoby Myers, Jaden Reed, and Patrick Taylor. I really like this. I think this is a really nice lineup. I have no issues with this whatsoever. I think this is a really strong lineup, Fletch. So nice work there. Don't have any notes or anything I would change, to be honest. I think that's really nice. Big Bo, we might have to just keep you on. That might be your responsibility for the live streams because I really like that, and I'm not sure that I have enough. I don't even know, enough tech savviness to go ahead and pull the trigger on that. But both of those you just crushed it on both of those. So nice work. Thank you.
No problem.
Blake said Musgrave over Reed, and I don't disagree there. I think that especially in lineups like this, if you can leave money on the table, I do think that lineups with Taylor, similar to what I was saying about Taylor captain lineups, can also sort of be applied to the flex lineups. Lineups that have Taylor and Hooper, especially if you're playing large field tournaments and you want to get unique, don't be afraid to leave money on the table. And like I was mentioning, I have Musgrave and Reed with similar projections on ownership and with their fantasy scores. So just by dropping down to Musgrave from Reed, leaving some money on the table, you're instantly going to decrease the amount of duplicate lineups you have, and possible that you don't have any duplicates. And like I mentioned, they're not that far off. I think they're within a point of each other for projection, excuse me. So yeah, I don't think that that's a bad move at all. I don't think that, dropping down to Musgrave from Reed is a bad call at all. I think that's an interesting call by Blake there. So perfect. And Stank says, sheesh, Josh Jacobs fade. Yeah, I like Jacobs too, but it's tough. It's tough to get Adams, Garoppolo, Love, and Jacobs. You probably have to fade one of those guys. And if you get those four guys, you definitely can't get Myers. And then you're kind of like, I've used this phrase 100 times already this stream, so I apologize, but you kind of pigeonhole yourself into different, or into like the same sort of build. So similar to how I was kind of viewing the Niners slate, where I thought a lot of lineups were going to include the four Niners guys and Ayuk, Debo, Purdy, and CMC. It's really hard for all of those guys to get there. Same with Adams, Garoppolo, Jacobs, and Love. And it's definitely possible they all get there, but I also think that you're probably, you're really kind of limiting your options and maybe increasing the likelihood that you're going to have duplicated lineups. I should also mention that take everything that I'm saying, that Blake's saying, McBobo's saying with a grain of salt, just because it is very dependent on the contest that you're playing. And I don't play cash lineups, so everything that I'm saying is not geared towards cash lineups. If you are playing cash lineups, it's a whole different game. And yeah, so that's for a different stream there. But we do have some cash lineup players. I know BD, our friend Balls Deep, is a good or likes to play cash lineups. I don't know if I'd say he's a good cash lineup player. I don't think he's here to hear me talk crap about him, but he is good. He's a good player for sure. All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. We're gonna get into some trivia right now. If you're watching on YouTube, jump over to the Discord because that's how you can win some cash for this trivia question. And I apologize, guys. I usually come with a trivia question for both teams. And I am a Packers fan, so it's going to come off a little biased, but I didn't have time to look up a trivia question. And I got to leave a little bit early. I'm going over to my dad's place to watch the game. So I apologize. I only have one Packers related question. And I should mention too, this is coming from our friend East of Ethan. I don't see Ethan in chat here. So whoever happens to win this trivia question, make sure you tag Ethan. His username is East of Ethan, and I'll send $5 to whoever the winner is. Reminder that for Blake and McBobo, you got to answer in the NFL fantasy chat. Whoever is the first person to answer the question correctly will get $5 coming their way. All right, here we go. Let me pull up the question. I think someone should be able to get this pretty quickly. We'll see. Who is the player who did the first Lambeau leap? Who is the Packers player who did the first Lambeau leap? We got a Brett Favre. We got an Antonio Freeman. Neither one of those is correct. Caleb. Only right that Caleb gets it after he complimented me. Fire emojis in the chat for Caleb. Yeah, it was Butler. Leroy Butler. I believe it was on a pick six. An interception return for a touchdown. And yeah, he's the first guy that did the Lambeau leap and then kind of took off from there. So yeah, I thought that was a good question. Caleb, make sure you shout out East of Ethan. For he won a trivia question last week and offered to move his winnings to another player. So yeah, make sure you thank East of Ethan there. Taxi saying Butler interceptions trigger me. There you go. Oh, and Fantasy Sports King with a fun fact. I did not know this. He did the first Lambeau leap against the Raiders. I had no idea. So there you go. That's a very, very fitting question for tonight's game for sure. So awesome. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. Blake and McBobo, thanks for jumping on the voice channel with me. I really do appreciate it. It makes it a lot better to have some more opinions and more voices, so I'm not just rambling on the whole time. I appreciate you guys, and good luck tonight, everyone. 3 for 3. McBobo at it again. I love it. All right. Peace out, guys. See you later.
I only have 6 options, so I mean, it was 50-50.
Hey, you crushed it, though. You crushed it. I thought they were all perfect timing. So great work there. All right, guys. Good luck, everyone. See ya.